So here you can see side by side the portrait image and the composited image. So I took this portrait and I rather like this portrait, but I equally at the same time took some similar portraits and I thought I would composite them together in some way. So I took a bit of everything. I took the dress, I even took the background, but I'm not particularly keen on this shot because of all that barbed wire in the background, that horrible fencing. So I don't think this particularly works as an image on its own, but it's got a little background in case I need some. So my first choice is to decide which image I start with as my main image. And I'm kind of torn between these two. I like the model's smile in that one. I think she looks very beautiful. But equally I like that one as well, and I think she's got a bit more attitude in this one. So I really don't know. I'm quite torn between these two. So at this point I'm just literally looking at the model's face and deciding which one I want to start with as my main image. I think I'm going to do this one. So the first thing you're going to do is use the crop tool to lengthen your canvas. If you've got a ratio, then just clear it so that you can do whatever you want. And just make your canvas bigger. If you need to, then you can use the magnifying glass to zoom out a bit. And then you can see what you're doing a bit better. The first thing I'm going to do is go to this image of the bottom half of the dress. I'm going to take this, copy my background layer and take it into my main image. Get it roughly in place where you think, but it doesn't need to be exact. Lower your opacity a little bit if you need to, and then that way you can see if your lines are lining up a bit more. Here is actually a more difficult image because you've got not only a lot of detail in the dress, but you've got a lot of detail in the background as well, so this is quite a difficult image to do. But just get it as good as you can, then make a mask, turn your mask black by Command I or Control I, and then paint in your layer with a white brush, because white shows. And then once you've painted it in, it'll be a bit easier to then kind of try to line up. So as long as you've got it roughly right, you can then play around a bit more. And you may notice that there's a bit of colour difference, and that's fine, we will deal with that. So here I'm just trying to blend in the layers as best as possible so that you don't notice that I've added an extra photo, and then I'm just using my move tool to just move it around. You can use the actual arrows on your keyboard to make subtle movements. So now let's make a curves layer, and this is to address the colour difference. So we're going to clip this to just the layer we've added, so it's not affecting your whole image, it's just affecting that layer. Now if you pull this curves layer up, it's going to make it brighter. If you pull it down, it's darker. So we're just going to take the mid-tones in the centre and just pull down slightly until the colours match up. So now let's just try to go back to our layer that we're working on. So don't stay on the curves layer, go back to the layer and then just work on the mask a little bit more and try and blend in those images really well so that you can't see where the two images blend in. So I'm fairly happy with that, and I know we've got space in other places, but we're going to add other layers, so it's not going to be like that when we've finished. And I always zoom in to just try and see exactly how well I've blended things in, to see if there's things I need to work on, because sometimes from a distance you don't notice, and then you zoom in and it's awful. But then again, you have to be sort of reasonable with it, because are that many people going to zoom in? This looks bad to me, but I know about it. If I was just looking at this image for the first time, would I really zoom in and analyse every bend in those trees? I don't think so. So don't waste your time doing things that are unnecessary or that only you would notice. So again, just seeing if the dress looks okay. Can we notice where the dress is blended in? I can't see here if there are any mistakes. I think it looks alright to me. So I'm going to flatten my image. I know some people like to work with lots of layers, but I prefer to flatten my image. I find it easier. So we can close that layer now, we don't need that anymore. Now let's go to the other part of the skirt. And we do the same thing, we copy the background layer, take it into our main photo, and we're doing the same thing, we're trying to roughly match it up. Here I think we're going to have to resize it because it's a bit big, so we're going to use free transform and distort and make it the size we want it. Again, lower the opacity to see better where it's fitting in, how it's lining up. And if it's roughly right, then just make your mask, invert the mask, and then draw it back in. Here I'm just trying to line it up a little bit better first. I mean, how you do things is up to you. You find the way that you think is easier. I'm just going to try to free transform and change the layout a little bit just so it fits a little bit better. Sorry, my computer's a bit slow, it's just trying to do quite a few things at once. I'm recording a video and doing the edit at the same time. So now let's use a white brush to bring that layer in. And again, I'm only going to bring it in the areas that are black now. So I'm not trying to paint over what we've already done. I'm just adding what we don't have. And at some point it's going to run out. Yeah, that's where our photo finish is. And again, you can see we've got an even bigger colour difference with this image. You know, that's the thing, when you're shooting outside, the light changes so much. I did use a Canon speed light here with a softbox, but even so, the natural light's changing constantly, so your exposure is changing. And even though these were shot sort of a few seconds apart, there's a massive colour difference. Using those curves layers are really easy. You can easily then change and match things together, and it doesn't take long. So here I'm just going to try and bring in a bit extra dress. I quite like when my dresses are really big, so I'm going to see what it's like to bring in some extra dress. That's when my image runs out, so we're going to have to do something a bit different there. I'm going to try and just keep that bit of the dress. So I'm just using a soft brush and varying between my black and white layers to just draw in what I want and delete what I don't want. To be honest, that's good enough for me. It might not be perfect, but I don't think anyone's going to zoom in that far to see what little mistakes there are. Most of my photos are for Instagram or social media, so they're going to be small size. If it was a billboard or something like that, then I'd be more careful. But you know, I know where my image is going to end up, so I'm not too worried about little tiny details that aren't perfect. Right, so we've got a huge colour difference here that we've got to deal with, so I'm going to use my curves again, clip it to the underlying layer, so we're only working on the layer we've just brought in and not affecting the whole image, and then pull those down to the colour we want. If you think it's too strong, then you can use your opacity of that layer to just tweak it a little bit rather than tweaking the curve. And that's good enough for me. I'm not that keen on the edges here, so I'm going to add a second curve, but I'm just going to concentrate on the very edge of the dress. Again, I'm going to clip it to the layer below, and I'm just concentrating on the very bright bits. So I've used my tool there to just select where that brightness was on the curve. And now I'm just going to draw in over the brightest areas and just bring those down a fraction. You may not be able to really see what I'm doing here because it's very subtle, but I can see a difference. And again, later on when I edit this properly, I'm going to do a lot of colour toning and a lot of levels difference and curves difference, so I'm not too worried if it's not perfect at the moment. As long as it's pretty much a very good basis, a sort of blank canvas for me, that's good enough for me at the moment. And again, if you've got more than one layer, you can then just have a play with different layers and find the best combination. So that's what we've done by adding that part of the dress. Now I think we are cutting off a bit of the dress. I think there's a bit more of that photo that we can add. So if we just elongate our canvas on our base layer, we can then bring back a bit more of the dress. We can then just paint in down the side. That's better. Okay, so I'm going to flatten my layers again. Just save that. So now let's use this image and let's just take that portion just to fill in that hole that we've got in our image. I don't think it will cover all of it, but we can use it for part of it. So let's bring that in here. Again, we're just trying to match it up as best we can. Invert our mask and just pull it in. I think we need to move this a little bit more. There we go. I think I'm happy with that. This area is a bit dodgy. I think we'll have to come back to that later and just correct it. Let's close that, we don't need it anymore. Okay, let's do this side first. So I'm going to copy this across as before. I'll use the dress just to, because I think the dress is easier to line it up, but obviously I'm not going to use that area. As I said before, I think this background is quite complicated to blend in. So let's have a go. Oh, sorry about that. I've got my toddler running around and he just yanked my MacBook, so I slipped. Let's redo that. So I'm just trying to blend it in as much as possible. I'm trying to leave as much untouched as I can because this is such a difficult background. I just want to bring in where I've got a black hole, basically. So I'm happy with that. We've got a little bit missing at the top, but that's not a big deal. Let's flatten the image. And now finally we just need to find some way to fill in the hole on the right. I think this is one of the hardest bits because we haven't really got a very good background. Let's close this image, we don't need it. So let's just try taking off a patch from here and let's see what we can work with. So layer by copy and just pull that across. Just put it roughly where we want it. Then mask it out, invert the mask, and draw in with a white brush. So I think there's a few different approaches we can try here. We can try this approach where we just draw in what we've got from the photo. Obviously we've got the softbox there that we need to deal with, so that's not ideal. And again, I'm just playing between my white and black brushes, just trying to draw in what I want, take out what I don't want, and it's just a test. It's just playing around really, seeing what works, see what doesn't work, and blending it in as much as possible. And sometimes you might want to either take your opacity down, or if you're using a Wacom tablet that is pressure sensitive, it's a lot easier that way. I'm not here, I'm just using my touchpad on my MacBook, so I haven't got pressure sensitive brushes, so I'm just using my fingers or my mouse. So I'm just trying to blend in as much as possible here, and again, it's easy for me because I use an 85mm 1.2. I think I shot this at 1.6, so my background is all pretty blurred, so that makes things a lot easier. If you shoot at sort of f6 or f8 or f10, you probably will find this more difficult because you'll have to be a lot more exact. I can get away with a lot when I'm shooting wide open. I still don't think this looks that great. But then again, I sort of think, you know, am I looking at it because I know that it's composited? Am I criticising it because of that? If I looked at this and didn't know, would I think anything of it? Probably not, to be honest. I think it would probably look alright. I probably wouldn't even really look at the background that much. Especially when you're zoomed out. I mean, I just find that branch a bit distracting. So what's another way that we can do this? So we duplicate the background layer. We use our tool just to draw in that area. We go to Edit, Fill, and Content Aware. OK. Let's see what Photoshop does. It will try to create some sort of background that matches the rest of the background in the image, and sometimes it does a really, really good job. So I always try this first. So I don't think that's done a bad job really. I mean, there's a big black hole there which I don't really like, but maybe we can combine both layers. So yeah, so if we take that layer down, but I take that branch out that's bugging me a little bit, make it fainter, and blend that with the job that Photoshop did, I think that's better, to be honest. Let's try just taking a bit of this softbox out, see what that looks like. I don't really like that, to be honest. I think it's taken a bit from the roof there when it's tried to do its job, so I don't think that works. Let's put that back. Let's flatten the image, and then let's do the content aware again just with the softbox and see if Photoshop will do a good job of that. As I've said before in my other tutorials, I'm all for getting Photoshop to do as much work as possible, and it normally does a really, really good job, so that for me is good enough. Again, I tend to add a lot of blur when I'm doing my main edit. You know, I sometimes add some elements, some overlays and things like that, so a lot of that area is going to get blurred out for me anyway, so that's good enough for me. Now let's just pull this in and let's just worry about the little extra bits that we need to correct to finish. I think I'm happy with that. I mean, again, when I do my edit, I'll probably expand the image a little bit and I'll probably play around a lot, but that's good enough for me to start with. So we've just really got some corrective bits to do now. So we can either, so to get rid of that bit at the bottom, there's sort of two things we can do. We can either take this tool, draw a little rectangle around it, do free transform, distort, and pull that down. And there we go. If that bugs you slightly because it is visible that that part of the ground has been elongated a little bit compared to the ground that's next to it, I mean, to be realistic, would you notice that if you were looking at this photo for the first time? Probably not. But if you are a perfectionist and it bugs you, and this does bug me a little bit, I would probably do it a different way. I'm just going to save that because I don't mind that version. So let's undo that. So let's try using just the patch tool. So if we just paint over it again, let's see what job Photoshop does. It might do a really good job. Actually, I really like that. I think that's done a very good job. That's good for me, and I think I'll keep it that way. And again, let's try to do the same at the top. Maybe Photoshop will do the work for us at the top. It's not ideal. Let's zoom in a little bit and see. Let's try a different way. So let's use this tool. Let's draw, make a layer by copy, just pull that across. And now let's just invert our mask and draw it in where we want it. And again, this is a little detail, but it's all the little details together make a really nice picture. So sometimes it's worth spending time on tiny little details because it all adds up. I like that, but I just think it needs elongating a little bit. So let's do free transform and just pull it slightly. These little details irritate me, like these little bits hanging down. Let's just get rid of them while we're here. And let's flatten the image. There we go. So I'm happy with that. And I think, aha, there's a bit here that we need to correct that I didn't notice earlier. So again, now let's just use the same tool. Let's come in and try and get rid of that horrible line, which I didn't notice earlier. And it just shows, you know, sometimes you have to look back with fresh eyes, because when I looked at it earlier, I thought it was all right, and I didn't notice that. Now we need to do a bit more work. And there may be some other areas in this photo that I just haven't noticed. So you do have to be careful, and I think it is worth going and have a cup of tea and coming back and looking at it fresh faced and zooming right in and trying to see if there's any issues. I mean, that's issues like that I would come across when I do my main edit, because I zoom in a lot. But it's easy to miss certain things at this stage, and I don't like that bit of the roof that's, yeah, the hair's gone a bit strange here. And the roof next to the model looks a bit odd. I feel like I can see my brush strokes. I do find sometimes though that you think you've done something wrong, and actually when you look at the original picture you'll find actually it was like that. You just kind of convince yourself that it's your fault when you've been editing, that you've done something odd, but it's not always you. But I still want to do something with that roof bit because it just looks odd. Okay, let's save that because I'm fairly happy. And now let's just try to correct the roof area. And I think the easiest way to do that is just to get one of the original photos again and just paint over that area. So I'm going to open one of the earlier photos and just take that bit of the roof. So layer by copy, pull it over. And again, if you spend more time in the beginning and do it more carefully, more accurately, you can save yourself time like I'm doing now. Because if I'd have done it more carefully originally, I wouldn't need to do this now. So now I've inverted my mask, I'm just going to draw in the areas that I think look odd. Again, we've got a big colour difference here, but I think if we play around with the opacity and we move it around a bit, I don't think it will show too much. That position is better, I think. Let's do our curves layer. blend those two layers in a bit, and we've got a dark shadow there anyway because it was a darker area, the light wasn't getting in there, so let's make it darker. Bring the opacity back if it's too much. I often find it's a lot easier to play with opacity than the actual layer. And then if we just bring the opacity down, we can just blend those right in. And then again, if you're using a Wacom tablet and you've got a pressure sensitive brush, that's a lot easier, and I do recommend that. Personally, I don't often use a Wacom tablet. I just use my touchpad on my Mac screen. I do have a Wacom tablet, but I don't know, I get into habits of using it a lot, and at the moment I'm just in a period where I'm not really using it. So I just play a lot with opacity. And you know what, I think I'm fairly happy with how that's looking. Again, it might not be perfect, but who is going to zoom in that far? Not that many people, I don't think. There we go, I think I'm happy with that. She says as she keeps doing edits. Right, I think I'm good with that. Let's flatten that image, and there we go. Let's save that before we lose it because it's a lot of work. Obviously there's things I would want to do with this image. Some other things like that orange object in the background and things like that, but I would do that in my main edit. So that's how we've gone from taking a portrait image to the composited full-length image. And both are good in their own rights. It just depends what your objective is and what you want to do.